Welcome to the Stories of Starting podcast. I'm Heather Boyd. As a self-employed artist for the last 30 years, I'm fascinated with people's passions and creative projects. In this series, we discover how people like you have started new projects by thinking outside the box, going with the flow, and tapping into their childhood imagination. So, hey guys, welcome back to the podcast, and today we're with Domenic Marinelli, and we're here to talk about his writing. And actually it's really interesting because Domenic was one of the first persons to reach out to me to ask if he could be a guest on my podcast, which I was super flattered when I first started the podcast. And now that I've got my feet wet a bit and got momentum going, he's here, so I'm super happy you're here.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, so Domenic, please introduce yourself and tell people who you are, what you do.
I'm Domenic Marinelli. I am a writer, full-time writer. I am a journalist, freelance writer. I currently write for babbletop.com. Where I write articles and script content for their videos on their YouTube channel.
Oh, very cool.
So that's what I'm doing freelance right now. I'm always looking for other projects. I've written for so many online magazines, Hot Cars to name a few. The Montreal West Island blog.
Oh yes, of course. Yeah, Rhonda Massad. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. I've written 2 pieces for them so far.
Awesome.
And of course, I write novels.
Yes.
Most recently, An Open Letter to Arthur Pond.
Yes, which is what hooked me in, because how I know Domenic is originally I met you at Twigs and Leaves, which is an open mic event in St. Anne de Bellevue, which is no longer happening, but there are other happenings, other things not replacing, but branching out, let's say. Yeah, exactly, literally, that's right. So we have a few things going on, and then I saw you actually speak at or read at the Bay Durfee Library.
Yes.
And that's where you hooked me in, because you read from your new book, and I just was fascinated. I just loved your reading style, and it just really perked my attention. So I went online and I got the book, and I read the first one, and I'm anxious to read some more. So that's super cool. So tell me, how many books have you written so far?
This is my 12th one.
Wow.
It's my 12th book.
Wow. That's cool. And so tell us a little bit about the genre of writing that you do. I know there's a variety.
There is, yeah.
Yeah.
I like to consider myself a multi-genre writer,
okay,
if you will.
Cool.
It's basically what I feel in the moment. I have tons of ideas, but whenever I settle in to work on one particular project, usually I have an idea of what style I'm going to go with, or what style I won't go with.
Right.
But say I dabble a little bit in horror, of course, transgressive fiction primarily.
Okay, cool.
And non-genre alike, so there's a little bit of everything, really.
Nice. So were you a Stephen King reader growing up?
Absolutely, yeah.
I think everybody was influenced by Stephen King.
You can't not be. He's the most successful horror writer
It's
ever.
True. It's true.
At the end of the day, 2 to 3 books a year since 1974.
Yes, exactly.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, no, I remember certainly when I was growing up, he was super popular as well, and I remember being so impressed and moved by the book The Stand.
Yes.
I'm anxious to read your other works, and so you've done poetry. You said even haiku. You've done some.
Yes, I've done a few haikus, poetry. My poetry is like narrative poems.
Okay.
So they're like little mini short stories in and of themselves.
Cool.
And I've also written a play. It's collected in Strays in the Cold.
Oh, interesting.
The play's called Revelation.
Okay, yeah.
All of which can be found on Amazon.com.
Fantastic.
Amazon.ca, whatever variant.
Yeah, that's
and,
right.
In ebook and in print.
Cool. And the play, has it been produced?
No, unfortunately not.
Okay.
I hope so.
Is that something that might happen in the near future?
Oh, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
I'm open to that.
Okay.
100%.
Okay.
Just come to me, please.
That's fine.
Anyone wants to produce a play, just come to me, and you'll see how easy it is.
Well, it's funny. I actually have a friend, because our neighbor, I remember when we first moved to our house in Beaconsfield, I walked down the street one day, and there was this little boy. He was 9 years old, and he would set up a garage sale at the end of his street. His name was Adrian. I'm gonna definitely contact him because he already he was like a super entrepreneurial kid, you know, and he used to come over to my house and we make jewelry and you know, he was just really creative. And then the years went by and I didn't hear much about what he was doing. I think he traveled and stuff. And then he went back to John Abbott for the theater program.
Oh yeah.
And since that, he created sort of a production company and put on several productions. So this might be up his alley. So, and that's what I love about these podcasts. It's all about connecting people and, you know, finding out about what people do and how, you know, you can, and also how it relates to my experience too of different people I've met and stuff. So it's, I find it fascinating. So Domenic, tell me, going way back now, when you were a kid, like what was your first spark of an idea to become a writer?
For me, going back to when I was 10 years old for sure. Mm-hmm. Before that, you know, I was having fun doing anything. Yeah. I loved movies, I loved comic books, yes. I loved to read, and just when I was 10 was the first time I read Fantastic Mr. Fox. Okay, cool. And that was the first like storybook that really like blew me away. Wow. You know, it like really took me in. And I started to say to myself, well, you know, I probably got a few of these in me, and I decided to go ahead and write a little something. And it got published in a school board periodical. Oh, cool. Wow. So that, you know, kind of pointed me in the right direction a little bit. And finally, I got to grade 6. Yeah. And my teacher there, Mr. Summers, was very instrumental in helping me cultivate my writing and my reading. Okay, fantastic. Wow. And that was probably the earliest spark. Yeah. And as the years went on, I would work on writing stories, just keep them. I didn't know what to do with them. Yes, you know, yes. I mean, okay, yeah, I'm writing, but whatever. I got copybooks like this of stories full. Yeah. And finally I got to college. And again, my writing garnered me a little bit of attention. Yes. It was a sociology report that I had written. My professor, Professor McKay at Vanier College, stopped me in the parking lot one day and he said, hey, I just want to talk to you about your paper. Sociologically speaking, I'm not too sure, but man, could you write? Oh, awesome. That's so cool. That's great. You know? I love it. And that kind of sparked my interest. And then later on, it got a little more serious. I mean, I probably didn't get serious until my early 20s. Okay, cool. Which was when I started sending stories out to short story magazines, publishers, agents. Yes. All rejected. Oh, yes. But it's part of the paying of the dues, right? Oh, well, exactly. That's right. It's part of the process. And back then, in my early 20s, it was already the new millennium. So I was still using a typewriter. Okay, wow. Cool. Sending my stories out by mail. Yeah, interesting. So it took a while to convince me about all the technology. It's true. Well, it's incredible, you know, what's available for authors now. And it's funny, just before we started the podcast, I was trying to rack my brain about the name of this site for writers, and it's called Wattpad. Yeah. And actually, we were telling Domenic about this woman, Anna Todd, who became like super famous because she started writing chapters of a book on her cell phone and uploading it to Wattpad. And she started gaining a following, and then eventually, you know, there was so much demand for her work. She published books. She became a best-selling author. Hollywood created a movie about her book, and it's just like incredible what's available for people now. And it's the same for me. When I was an artist starting, there was no internet, there was no Etsy, there was none of this, so you had to be really scrappy about getting your stuff out there. That's right. Yeah, so now you have a bit of a social media presence. Yeah, so tell us a little bit about where we can find you on social media. I'm on Facebook under Domenic Marinelli. Right. You were telling me to maybe launch a page. A page. Yes, so coming soon. We're looking at that. Yeah. Nice. I'm on Twitter. Yes, Twitter's a good place for writers. Find me author Domenic Marinelli. Okay, over there, and we just launched Instagram. Fantastic. Nice. So it's still in the baby stages. Yay. But that's also author Domenic Marinelli. Yeah, yeah. And your website. And I got a website. Yeah, which fantastic. Pretty much. That's what we got going. That's awesome. And so you have a blog on the website, and you were actually showing me, if you want to grab, you have one of those books was
a compilation of some blog posts, which I think is a great idea. You know, in social media they talk about the idea of repurposing content, which is amazing. And a lot of blogs become books, you know, and it's so tell us a little bit about this book.
What was interesting about this, I started those blogs as I was trying to get work as a freelance writer for a lot of other websites. Because when I kept applying to these positions, they kept asking me for past experience.
Right.
I didn't really have any journalistic experience. So I decided to start my first blog, which was Resonant Words.
Okay, cool.
And I had a second blog, which I called, help me out one second. The Sunset Quill, sorry.
Cool, it's all good.
The Sunset Quill Review.
Okay.
And basically I was writing anything and everything about any topic whatsoever. And finally, those two blogs got me some writing experience.
All right, perfect.
And I got hired by my first magazine, which was The Gamer.
Amazing. Okay, that's so cool.
I didn't know much about video games at the time. So I had to really do a lot of research. Well, I knew about video games, but older video games, the stuff that I liked. So. But it was interesting, and it got me my first freelance gig.
Amazing.
And I was able to finally stay home to concentrate on my writing.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Which is really interesting. I went back and forth a little bit. Unfortunately, because, you know, you panic. You're like, I can stay home to write. I don't know.
That's right,
So you kind of go back and forth with the odd jobs. For me, most of the time, it was the kitchen.
Yes, you told me that you'd done chef work. For sure.
Going back and forth like that was causing a little too much stress. So I just said, no, I'm just going to do this. And I've been doing it for a little while now.
Oh, that's cool.
So.
Well, and to me, there's a fine line too about doing work, like outside work, to inspire your writing, and then just going full time into the writing. You know, I was thinking about that earlier because a lot of the jobs that I've done along the way, and now I'm doing jewelry full time, but over the years it's been, you know, up and down. And so even jobs I've had, like working in daycares and teaching, it all feeds the art, right? So what about that concept of, like, you were working as a chef, so like literally, was it feeding your work? Were you getting story ideas with the people you work with, or was it just more draining than actually inspiring?
I'd say that towards the end it was draining. I mean, there was a time when it was inspiring. Because I started with my dad part-time.
Okay, cool.
Because he was a classically trained chef.
Oh, wow.
He's retired now. You know, when you're there part-time, you have more time to hide in the fridge and scribble some notes.
True, yes.
But when I got the more serious kitchen work, it was draining more than anything because it was robbing from me. And then the stress levels were raised really high.
Well, exactly.
Because it's long hours, 16-hour days.
Oh boy,
And by the time you get home, you have like 1 or 2 days out of the week to write.
Exactly.
And the way I like to write, I I mean, I like to just like really just get it done.
That's right.
I don't understand how people could just write minimally. And I understand it happens. I'm not judging them, but for me, it's like I can't do that. It's like I can't compute that. I have to write full tilt, and I have to do it all day long.
That's right.
Or else
it doesn't work.
It starts to get stressful. I get anxiety.
No, I get it.
And I'm a little depressed. I gotta be honest.
No, I get it, and I think everybody has their different style. Like I remember reading. I don't remember who the author was, but maybe it was Jack Canfield or one of those that was saying he always waits for inspiration to hit to write.
Oh wow!
But inspiration always hits at like 6 a.m. every morning type of thing. So he's created this ritual of getting inspired at a certain time every day. So he's very ritual scheduled, whereas someone like, it sounds like you more are like spontaneous, and then once you start, you go with it type of thing. And I get that. Once you're in the
I definitely have to. I mean, there are those magical moments when inspiration hits when you're not writing. And that's what notebooks are for.
Yes, exactly. Oh, I keep them on my iPod all the time, the notes.
These days, exactly. I still have pencil and notebooks wherever I go. It's like Jack Kerouac, you know.
Okay,
like,
true,
you know, he was on the road for 7 years.
Yes.
And when he got home, there's this beautiful picture, you could probably find it online, of him with all the notebooks from those 7 years, all on top of his bed in his bedroom.
Wow.
And he was getting ready to sit down and write on the rope.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing.
Incredible. It's so romantic.
Didn't you say he wrote it like really in a few weeks?
3 weeks.
And that's what inspired the Arthur Pond book, you said,
That's right.
in a sense.
Absolutely.
Tell us
in
about
a sense.
that.
Yeah. Arthur Pond basically was inspired by the beatniks, all of them. Which the main beatniks were Jack Kerouac, William Burroughs, Allen Ginsberg, Gregory Corso, and Herbert Huncke.
Okay.
We'll call them the five fathers of the beat movement.
Cool.
Jack Kerouac primarily was, let's say he was one of the main ones. He's the one who wrote the most.
Right.
And interestingly enough, sometimes they would write, especially him, he would write in a type of stream of consciousness.
Right, yes.
Where he would sit down and it was almost like automatic writing. Whatever came to mind, he would just write down.
Yeah.
So many of his novels were written like that. Not all.
Okay.
But specifically like Dr. Sachs was written in that way when he was in Mexico City with William Burroughs. And he would either drink a little or sip a little of the tea, as they used to say.
Yes.
And it was so interesting because it's a funny story, and you could research this.
Yeah.
But he would write Stream of Consciousness, and a chapter ended when William Burroughs would walk into the room.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So when you read it, it's so incredible.
Yeah.
So I always wanted to kind of experience that because all my other novels were, usually always outlined.
Yes, that's what you were saying. You planned
Plots,
out.
especially a novel like Generic V.
Yeah.
Like this is more of a crime novel.
Okay, right.
And it's got to be outlined, or else you don't know where you're going.
Well, yeah.
At least I have to.
Has to make sense.
But for once, I just wanted to just kind of go.
Yeah.
And I did that with Arthur Pond, and the first 40 to 60 pages came out in 2 sessions.
Wow, amazing.
And then I said to myself, okay, let me go back to this after a 2-week break and see what we have here. And when I read it, I realized there was a story there.
Oh, cool.
Something that had come out.
Yeah.
And then I went through an edit and an expansion period. And
amazing.
That's all we have.
Wow. Well, I love that concept of downloading, a lot of motivational speakers and writers talk about that a lot, where they just download this information and they don't even know where it comes from, but it's you've got to wonder about the universe and all these, these things that are floating around, and when it's the right time, it just comes through you and you write. And then, of course, based on your own experience and all that type of thing as well.
Everything all together. It's amazing that you say that, because Kerouac was a firm believer in, I love your expression, downloading. It's so amazing, because he truly felt like, because he was a very spiritual person, he felt that novel was dictated from God. I can see it, and I do it with my art too. Sometimes I'll wake up in the morning with a design solution or a design idea, and it's just, where does it come from? Who knows? My dreams, my past, sometimes you just don't know. That's it. That's right.
Oh, that's so interesting. I love it. Well, what I loved about the Arthur Pond book too is it really had a kind of autobiographical feel to it, like a vibe. So what part of you would you say is reflected in that book?
For sure, the frustrations with the writing.
Yes.
For sure. Interestingly enough, the some of the themes in the book are not my own.
Yes.
We'll say some of the troubles that he experiences.
Yes.
Not really my own, but I have other troubles, as we all do.
Yeah.
I'd say his frustrations with the writing, for sure. That's the main thing.
You feel it,
Absolutely.
Definitely.
So being able to do that, but everything else came from the imagination, like it always does.
Cool, because it also has a very kind of Hollywood film vibe too. So I can totally see it like being transferred into a film. It's kind of you have a real visual to it, like when you see it, a lot of the scenes.
That's awesome.
Interesting. That's cool.
Thank you.
So are there some of your books that you could see as films particularly, or?
Oh man, so many. I mean, my first one, Weathered Tracks.
Okay.
It started as a screenplay.
Oh, very cool.
I had actually written a screenplay because I was convinced at a certain point that it's like, oh, I'm Canadian and I'm not sure about the great American novel.
Yeah.
So I was worried. So I said, I'm going to write a screenplay.
Okay, cool.
But then I realized that it was way too narrative.
Okay, right.
I was like, okay, I'll turn it into a novel.
Yeah.
And so that one would make a great film, I think.
Interesting.
And Generic V. I think that Generic V, to me, it has a feel of like a huge blockbuster.
Okay.
You're going to be reading it because I'm going to...
Yeah, I'm actually fascinated because when I read the title, I think of the book Generation X, just because of the sort of the just the sound of the name. So, but yeah, I remember loving that book. I mean,
that was great.
It's so funny because I have a lot of stuff online. I write comics and I get a lot of them like shared all over the place, and people are always saying. Like, okay, boomer to me, because, you know, that's this big expression about being a boomer, right? Baby boomer. And I was like, nope, I'm Generation X.
Exactly. That was a great one.
Yeah, exactly.
I read it again just recently.
Yeah, well, he's an amazing artist too.
Yes,
like
that's right.
He had a show at the Architecture Museum of some of his installations and sculptures. He's incredible. Yeah.
He was recently. When you watch videos online, you think it's recent, and it's 2013.
Yeah.
But I saw a video recently. He was being interviewed by Chuck Palahniuk.
Okay.
The writer of Fight Club.
Okay, cool.
And he actually was interesting as an American writer, and his main influence was Douglas Copeland.
How interesting.
And that to me is...
He's from out west, eh?
That's right.
Yeah.
BC, right?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Yeah, but he actually studied at McGill, from what I understand.
Oh, that's so interesting.
He dropped out, and don't quote me on this, but I believe he dropped out and then he went to study at an art school.
Oh, that's possible.
Yeah.
I didn't even know he was an artist until years, years after I'd read the book. But his work is very interesting, very conceptual, and
I'm a huge fan.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. And so now, right at the moment, you work independently. You don't have an agent or a publisher?
No agent.
Okay.
Right now, all my novels have been independently published through Amazon. I started with Lulu for my first 2 books,
right?
Which was a little more of me.
Okay.
And then we came across Amazon.
Yes. Nice.
And we realized that the profit for the authors was actually better.
Oh, that's good. Good to know. Yeah.
And we went with Amazon.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, my freelance work has been professionally published.
Oh, interesting.
That's the interesting part of it. But I'm consistently sending out stories to the literary magazines while we still have them.
Yes, exactly.
Because there are a lot of literary magazines that publish online, but we still have the print ones, like Ellery Queen, Carve Magazine.
Right.
So while we still have them, I'm still trying to get in there.
Well, yeah, definitely.
That's it. Trying to move forward. Right now, the publishing world, I find, is at a little bit of a standstill because you have independent books that are actually doing better.
Well, yeah, that's it.
Than, let's say, novels published at, let's say, Scribner.
Right.
Or Viking.
Yes, that's it.
So we don't know where we're going right now as far as like what is the best course of action.
Okay.
So independent right now is pretty good. Like the author, I'm so sorry, the Wattpad author you were mentioning.
Oh, yeah, Anna Todd.
Anna Todd.
Yes,
that's
right.
totally independent.
Yeah.
And she had nobody to back her, so.
Well, that's it. But I think she ultimately was picked up by a publisher, and it's sort of like a stepping stone. Like it can be a stepping stone. Like another story that I love. I don't know if you know the Canadian author Terry Fallis.
No, sorry.
Okay, so Terry Fallis, I think he's from the Toronto area, and he actually worked in politics, not as a politician, but worked in that field. He was trained as an engineer, and the reason I remember that is because my dad's an engineer, and I actually saw Terry Fallis speak at the Hudson Book Festival, or literary, I forget what it's called, the Writers Festival in Hudson. So Terry Fallis was speaking one night, and so I thought, oh, that's interesting. I just chose a few random people to go see. So I listened to him speak, and one of the things he said, he had been trained as an engineer, and I'm like, oh my God, I got to buy his book for my dad. So I went after and got a book for my dad and got him to sign it and everything. But his story is so interesting because for years he worked full time, but he was writing and he was trying to get a publisher, trying to get his books out. And it was like banging his head against the wall. He couldn't get them out there. So he decided to go online. I guess he had a website or some kind of platform. So every week he would read a chapter of his book, and he would put it out to the internet, the interweb, put out that one chapter of his book, audio, him reading it. And then he gradually got this huge following of people, you know, so anxious for the next chapter. And then before he published or put out the last chapter, he offered for sale, right? You can buy the book. So before he actually put out the last chapter, people could buy the book and get sort of the heads up on that. And so I just thought it was such a great concept, you know, and so original. I never heard of anyone doing that before. So I have a friend, my friend Patricia Srigley, who's a writer, and I keep saying to her, try this, you know, put out some chapters and just with you reading it, because you know, it's a good way to get people engaged, because sometimes the idea of buying like either a paper book or a Kindle book or whatever, you don't know anything about it, like if you don't know the author, but if you could listen and get a feel for the vibe and the story and whatever, I thought it was brilliant.
It is.
Yeah.
Sounds
great. Neat idea.
There's so many great ways to make it these days. Like we were saying, I mean, the old, you know, go to the publisher and wait on the slush pile isn't really the way anymore.
Yeah.
And there's so many great ways, so many great ideas.
No.
It's like what happened to Josh Malerman.
Okay, I don't know that story.
Do you know the movie Bird Box?
I've heard of it.
Sandra Bullock. Well, that started as an independent novel.
Oh, cool.
And it just changed his life overnight.
Amazing.
So.
Wow. So the sky is the limit, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Cool. So, Domenic, do you have any words of wisdom for aspiring writers or anything you'd like to share?
Basically, keep at it. Any art form. It could be debilitating. It could be depressing, but if you keep at it, good things can come your way.
Things can come
at
your
the end of the
way.
day, you know that as well as
Yes,
an artist. So
definitely.
I think that all artists have that in common. Musicians, artists, writers, actors.
Yeah.
Just keeping at it and really working at your craft and trying to improve and realizing that every day you're gonna learn something new.
Yeah.
You're not the be all end all of it.
Yeah.
And every day you're gonna learn something new, but keep at it. I guess that's the only thing I could say.
I think that's great advice, and I think also the idea of you know, not necessarily doing collaborations, but connecting with people, like, and just the fact you reached out to me, I got to learn more about what you do, and sometimes it's just, you just have to ask, or you just have to put it out there, and then amazing things can happen. I think it's great.
I totally agree. And what you do by it's something as an artist for yourself, but what you're doing, you're giving back to the community.
Yes.
And that's an incredible thing to see you at the events when I'm reading. That's where we met.
Yes.
And, like, for you to be doing that is an amazing thing. And to speak on that for 2 seconds, not a lot of people are doing that these days.
No, okay.
You know, just to say, you know what, I care about what you're selling.
Yeah.
I want to read it, or I want to try it.
Yeah.
And then spreading the word. It's an amazing thing. So thank you so much for that.
Oh, it's my pleasure. No, I love it.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for being on the show.
It's an honor. Thank you.
And I'll link up all Domenic's books and website and blog and all that below. And also, I often link up things that we've talked about on the blog, in the show notes, and on my blog posts. So be inspired, guys.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
So I'll be reading from an open letter to Arthur Pond. Words are still important, or maybe at least they should be. Last century, the words we wrote, spoke, sang, and heard were capable of shaping a generation. Leaders and public figures taking the power of the written word and applying it to their political campaigns, musical movements, and ideals that are still going strong today in some circles. Yes, words were important, once. And they still are, even if they're taken a little more for granted nowadays. Maybe because they still help us get our messages across, past the boundaries of technology, past the walls we build around ourselves and our private lives, or what we portray to be our private lives. In many ways, they still help us talk to one another in these fast and modern times, and these days, all without ever having to meet one another. Every day, people are meeting online, launching careers online, and yes, even having sex online, living through the characters and avatars of their own creation, the digital lives they lead meaning more to them than the actual God-given lives. But it is in those minutes past, those seconds of both pleasure and pain, that words have the final effect. That final dose of what is real amidst what is not real. To the young ones out there was a time when words mattered more than you will perhaps ever know. For generations, writers toiled, bled, and sacrificed all for the written word. They spent every waking minute, and for some writers, all for just one single book. One offering that would change the world. And they did so, forsaking all else. Every single loved one that they had around them, every minute, even their health, and at times, even their faith. And all for just one story. Can you imagine it? Perhaps you can't. After all, they were just books, right? But rest assured that artists and writers like the ones just described still exist. Somewhere out there are writers wanting to leave their mark, just like the writers of the latter and even former centuries. This is the story of one such writer who lived in your times, who toiled amongst you, and sacrificed everything for just one chance, just one blessed moment of fortuity to be heard, and yes, to be remembered. Probably above all else, to be remembered. Call it a letter, call it a life story. It's addressed to one person and one person only. But to make it to that single person, it needs first to pass through the minds and mouths and ears of all of you, as each and every single one of you had a part in his rise, and yes, even his demise. So the fault is yours. And to Arthur above all else, may they all shed a collective tear just for you and no one else. And so on this dark night, the long dead rise and come to life to haunt the illiterate masses. Thank you.
Thanks so much for tuning in to Stories of Starting. If you would like to inspire others with your story, big or small, be sure to reach out via storiesofstarting.com. Until next time, always remember, your story matters.